The podcast that you are about to hear is an account of the majesty that occurred when a group of like-minded filmmakers came together in the blistering Texas heat of July 1973. It is all the more magical that they were completely oblivious to the change they were about to make to the landscape of modern horror. They could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they did during those days. For them, an idyllic summer of filming turned into a nightmare. The events of those days were to lead to the creation of one of the most brutal and beautifully shot movies in the annals of American history. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Geek-Minded fools.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Geek-Minded Fools. My name's Graham.
And I'm Scott.
As usual, we'll kick off with a visit to Scott in the monkey farm.
Hey, partners, it's time to see what Scott's doing down on his monkey farm.
Good day to you, sir.
Hello.
Welcome once again. Have you been well behaved since our last meeting?
Never.
Didn't think so.
No.
Right, well, let's just go straight in with some news then. I've got nothing to reward you for because obviously no good behaviour gets no good reward. So this week I've got a little bit of Romero news.
Oh.
I've got a bit of I Spit on Your Grave news. Please do spit as much as you like on said grave. And a little bit of Preacher news. Ah, indeed. So I'm going to start at the top. Romero's Empire of the Dead, which was the... was it 15 parts, was it, the comic?
It was 3 5-part series, yes.
So Marvel's Romero take did pretty well, I believe. It's obviously done well because the artist from Empire...
Did you read it?
I did. I read the one. I think you got me 2 or 3 episodes or 3 issues of it. Did you?
Got you the first
five. You got me. Yes, sorry.
The first
I did read it. Yes.
Arc. Yes.
It was kind of zombies and vampires and lots of nonsense going on.
Which is why I dumped it after that.
Yeah, it was an interesting take on the zombie genre, I must say, and it's nice to see Romero branching out into the comic book world. But as I said at the top there, it evidently did well because the artist, whose name I'm probably not going to be able to pronounce properly, Arthur Sudam, I think his name is. He was at the Louisville Wizard Comic Con thing, and he basically dropped a bit of news saying that AMC have signed it for a TV show.
Okay.
So AMC, obviously, we know are the home of zombie TV.
Yeah.
With The Walking Dead and such. Let's see what they do. Hopefully, it'll be in keeping with previous Romero projects and keep his kind of signature tone. Although I am unsure how they're going to fit the whole zombies and vampires thing into a coherent show.
Yeah, I'll admit the thing that disappointed me about it was obviously not only the inclusion of vampires, but the fact that what The Walking Dead have got right is the complete dissolution of society. And yet, within Empire of the Dead, sort of society had almost built itself back up again, and there was a business, there was a big company running everything, and it was all, it just didn't feel like zombies as I think they should be done. And it was it's about society trying to rebuild itself, and therefore with the introduction of vampires, which
there was more than a touch of Land of the Dead in there, I think, with the kind of the over the top businessman, Dennis Hopper-esque characters.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I like my zombie movies to be full of danger and full of, well, desperation, really. I think that's the key to a good zombie movie, to have all the characters, or a zombie TV show even, is to have them all as desperate as you can possibly get them, as we've been witnessing lately in AMC's Walking Dead, which we'll talk about at length, I believe, in another episode.
Yes, indeed.
But anyway, I digress. Miyazaki. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
Miyazaki was the director of a movie called Day of the Woman, or as we would probably know it, I Spit on Your Grave.
Ah, yes.
That was 37 years ago. It hasn't got any better with age.
No.
It is an awful, horrible, disgusting, filthy movie. But it has got its place in horror movie history because of the content, and it was quite a brave film to make at the time. There's been 2 sequels relatively recently, in the past 10 years, which have been absolute trash.
Were these sequels or was it a reboot?
No, they were pretty much well, I say sequels. Yeah, I suppose you could really say the first one was a reboot.
Yes,
which has had 2 sequels. Sorry,
yes.
Yes, you were right to correct me there. So yes, the first one was a reboot, and they've had 2 sequels since of that, and they've just been absolute trash.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean really, to the point where the third one, I watched most of it on fast forward because it was just awful. It was so terrible. You know me, I'm a big lover of gore. I love a good bit of gore in my movies, so this could well have been condensed into just a 10-minute gore montage. There's no story there to talk of. There's no real, acting chops on show at all.
Right.
But, as I say, 37 years after the fact, I Spit on Your Grave is getting a sequel with Camille Keaton, who was the original heroine in I Spit on Your Grave. She is reprising her role.
Buster Keaton's daughter.
I like the idea of the sequel because it is set after the ensuing court case and the book that she's written to kind of deal with the fact that she's had this horrible attack. I'm quietly optimistic about it. It could end up being really, really good. It won't though, will it? It'll be shit.
Yes.
But Miyazaki, I've given you a little bit of hope in my wishes there. So fingers crossed, he might do us proud. But,
big him up. Yeah.
But you never know. What else have we got this week? The Preacher trailer.
Yes, indeed.
Which I've only just recently seen. You've told me 2 or 3 times to watch it, and I'm a huge Preacher fan.
Yes.
And I've literally only just watched it. I think it looks fucking amazingly good.
Okay.
That's exactly how I would imagine Jesse's voice to be.
Dominic Cooper seems to be playing it really well. The look and the sound, absolutely spot on. Can't fault that at all. Yeah,
it's shot really well as well. It looks every bit as uninhabitable and hot and just awful as every page in the book. So, but the big thing for me, obviously, is our man from Lockout.
Yes,
whose
Joseph
name?
Gilgan.
Joseph Gilgan. That's it. As Cassidy. I think he's going to be a little bit special. For the small amount you see him in the trailer, that did make me do a little yelp.
I thought he looked shit.
Really? Didn't like it?
I thought the look of Cassidy just wasn't what it was in the comics. Just so different. Just didn't like it at all.
He's a bit fatter, isn't he, than
not even that, but just the hair. I mean, Cassidy in the comics looks like he's, a bit of a chancer. Whereas I just didn't think, with the look, with the hair and the shaved at the sides, almost your hairdo.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it. To me, it didn't suit the character. Obviously, we got a glimpse of Tulip sat in the car.
Yeah.
Who in the comics is obviously blonde and Caucasian, and he's now dark-haired and dark-skinned.
Yeah.
And I got to admit, sort of seeing that just made me go, oh, don't fuck this up. But we said when we first talked about it, we'll still have the comics, no matter how good or bad this TV show is. But my concern is that I love the comics so much that so much deviation from it, I'm just not going to like it.
Okay. Let's wait and see.
And also, no mention of the word of God or anything like that.
Albeit this is like a minute 25, this trailer, isn't it? So it is very much a teaser. One thing I didn't get was what's the fight going on the plane?
No idea.
Because I don't recall that at all.
But also, Cassidy sort of dressed as a waiter or something, it seemed. Which, again, is just like, what the fuck is going on? Now, I've got to admit, I'm exceptionally underwhelmed.
Oh, well, let's wrap this up with one little final bit of nothing news, really. Some set pics have leaked of Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange.
Yes.
And lo and behold, he looks like Doctor Strange.
Bit of a dishevelled beardy, wasn't it? Because it was in Tibet, and it's obviously...
That's right,
This is where he's gone to find himself and finds out about the... the whole sort of Sorcerer Supreme side of things. But
Doctor Strange,
interesting.
Not a character I know a great deal about, I must admit, but I do remember vividly when I was growing up having a VHS of the Doctor Strange movie, which I believe had quite a classic British horror actor in it. And I remember watching that incessantly for some reason. And I saw it very recently. I watched it on YouTube. It's shit. It's probably one of the worst films that's ever been put to celluloid.
Excellent.
So, they haven't really got much to kind of to beat. So let's see again what they do. I like the idea of coming back as Doctor Strange. I think he's a good choice.
Yes,
I hope they don't spoil it too much by leaking too much.
No.
Like they have done in the past with, every other fucking movie that's come out of Marvel so far. But yes, that's your monkey farm this week, sir.
Well, I do have one additional little bit, if I can chuck it on the end.
You are allowed to, sir, of course.
Thank you, God bless you. Last week, somebody passed away that I thought was very sad and needed a bit of a mention.
Okay.
And that was a man by the name of George Barris, who was the man who designed the 1966 TV series Batmobile.
Oh, did he really?
Yes.
Oh.
Passed away in his sleep at the age of 89. And I just thought we should give him a mention because such an iconic car.
Yeah.
He apparently developed an awful lot of cars for TV shows. He developed the Munsters
Oh, he did.
car.
Because I watched a documentary on the Munsters not so long ago. Yeah, I can't remember what the car's called, but it's got a brilliant name.
Yes, it's the...
Well, the Grandpa's one was called Dragula,
yes,
wasn't
that's
it? And the other one was just called the Munsters Coach,
Yes.
wasn't it?
And so, yeah, he designed that. He also designed the Beverly Hillbillies car, and also his company designed KITT. He actually later himself did a remodel of it for later series, but yeah, his company designed KITT. So a lot of iconic TV cars were as a result of this man's work, but obviously particularly the Batmobile, the 66 Batmobile, just what a beautiful, beautiful car.
It's a beautiful machine.
And so I just felt that we should mention his passing at age 89.
A tip of the hat to the man, a tip of the hat.
And because he's dead, obviously I can mention it.
Yes, you can. And obviously you're probably wondering why I'm a little bit sombre this week for the Monkey Farm, but that will become evident
All too apparent.
very, very
Yes.
shortly.
Yeah.
Right, that's it then, sir. Out.
I'm gone. Thank you.
Goodbye.
And now we shall move on to this week's Quick Hits.
Quick hits.
And first off this week, it's me. And I am going to do a movie. A couple of weeks ago, we did our Halloween scary movie episode.
We did indeed, which we've had a lot of nice comments on actually.
Oh, have we? That's nice.
Yeah, no one puts it on Facebook, but
No, of course
it's basically
not.
people just jeering outside my window of the
Yes,
Monkey
indeed,
Farm.
throwing stuff.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about the Blair Witch Project, I was talking about it being probably the first and the best found footage movie, but also one that created a history and created an internet buzz before the film came out. And I said probably the only one of its kind of that sort of film. And it was only afterwards I thought, hang on, there's one other film that did that and did it rather spectacularly, and it's a film that I know you and I both love. And I thought it should maybe be mentioned, even though I'm sure most of our listeners will have seen it.
I would hope.
And that is the rather wonderful Cloverfield,
Yes.
which of course kicked off with a massive viral marketing campaign. I can remember you first telling me about this and saying there's this movie and it's something to do with a drink called Slusho.
I had a t-shirt made. Do
You
remember?
did. And a company called, was it Tagrato or something like that, some Japanese sounding company.
Yeah, I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head.
And yeah, so it had this massive viral marketing campaign, and it was originally called 01/18/08 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which was supposedly the date that it was going to drop, and
Yeah.
it was this big countdown to this, and it sent you to various MySpace pages of all these people and a countdown clock and all these pictures that you could roll over and flip them over and that sort of thing and try and find
That's
out what this
right,
thing
yeah.
was. And it was this massive campaign that sort of people were desperate to find out what it was, and it eventually turned out to be this movie called Cloverfield, which is a great monster movie done in a found footage style. Basically tells the story of a group of friends, the main one of which is Rob, who, in a very clever plot device, we're obviously watching it on a videotape that the thing's been filmed on, but intermittently throughout the film you see scenes that were obviously being taped over, and it was of Rob and Beth, who were apparently friends but who suddenly slept together and then decided to go out for a day in Coney Island. And so cut amongst this trip to Coney Island and then waking up together is this horror movie, and it starts off at a leaving party for Rob.
For Rob, yeah, because he's going off to work for the company
Absolutely.
that's been
Yes.
involved in the viral marketing.
Yes, who's going off to Japan. It's thrown by his brother Jason and Jason's girlfriend Lily.
Yeah.
And it's all been filmed by a friend of theirs, Hud.
And why is he called Hud?
His name's something Hudson or something, isn't
Well,
it?
the fact of the matter is we see the film pretty much from his point of view
Yes,
for the whole
yeah,
film,
that's
don't
right.
we? So he's Hud, heads up display.
Oh, okay, cool. There you go. So, yeah, we very rarely see him because he's always behind the camera filming it about. And Beth is at this party, who obviously Rob had this thing with, and they have an argument and she storms out. And then suddenly they see on the TV about an oil tanker in the bay has capsized, and then suddenly the ground starts rumbling and all these explosions start going off, and they all rush outside to the top of this apartment building, and they basically see all this carnage in the background, and then this iconic shot of the head of the Statue of Liberty suddenly being thrown across town and rolling up the street next to them.
It's a brilliant shot.
Absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant.
And it's basically a monster has come out the sea and started to attack. And so a group of them, which is Rob, Hud, Jason, Lily, and a friend of theirs, Marlena.
It is Marlena, yeah.
Decide to sort of go. At first, they go out to find out what's going on, and then they realise that they have to escape the city. And they then get a phone call from Beth to say that she's trapped in her apartment, and so part of it is them going to have to rescue her. And it is just this massive monster, which you don't really see too much of until the very end, just causing absolute chaos throughout New York City and just trashing it. And
he's only a baby.
I know, this
looking
is it.
for its mum.
This is it. It's a scared thing, but to me, the most terrifying bit is the parasites that fall off it.
They're
These
awful.
horrible creatures that attack people, and if you survive the attack, I'm not going to tell you what eventually happens to you, but it needs to be seen to be believed. It's absolutely fantastic. Just a really good monster film, and a great use of the found footage format and everything done from the perspective of the people with the camera. And some great set pieces. A really good helicopter rescue.
Definitely not one to watch if you've get motion sickness.
No, indeed.
Be it in the cinema or even on a TV screen, because it's a hard watch if you've got motion sickness. It's a bloody good film.
It's
a bloody good film.
It's very good.
And they played it so well with all the viral marketing.
Yes.
They really did. And I mean,
built up the tension really well, and everybody was dying to see what it was.
I followed every single last little bit of that. And the day I went to see that at the cinema, I was so excited, and it genuinely didn't let me down in any way, shape or form. It is a truly, truly great film.
It is a great film.
It's not that old, is it? Was it 7 years, 8 years?
2008. It came out at the start of 2008, so it'll be nearly 8 years.
It is a great, great film.
Yeah,
good choice.
That's it. Cloverfield.
Good choice. Right, well, I'm going to bring the funny this week with my quick hit, sir. Have you, sir, ever been privy to a little show called Rick and Morty?
No.
Do you know of it?
No.
Rick and Morty is genius.
Okay.
It is absolute genius. It gets really, really good scores on a lot of the websites, such as IMDb, looking like a 9.3 on IMDb.
Oh, okay.
Which is, it's quite big for a new animated show. Well, I say new, it started in 2013. It's very much along the lines of The Simpsons and Futurama and things like that, but it's a lot more adult. Basically, it's Dan Harmon, who's the guy who did Community, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And a chap called Justin Roiland, who's the co-creator and voices both Rick and Morty. Now, Rick and Morty Rick is an elderly inventor type character, and he just happens to be the grandpa of Morty. And each episode sees Rick and Morty go off on ever bizarre and strange little adventures. All the while with Rick battling against his massive alcoholism, and Morty being a 14-year-old kid who just really wants to be a 14-year-old kid and hasn't really got time to be going off and having these adventures as such with Rick. The way it plays out between Rick, Morty, and obviously the rest of the family, because Rick is living with the family, he's the grandpa, is just genius, because Rick is so hyper intelligent and the family just want to have a family life, yet he's thinking about interdimensional space travel and things like that. And the fact that he is an alcoholic on top of it, you get some really great moments played out with some really really clever 10 to 15 second just the camera fixed on Rick while he has a really long thin bit of drool coming out of his mouth, which you're led to believe he's just thinking, but he's not. He's just zoning out because he's a massive pisshead. It's been running since.
Reminds me of someone.
Yeah, I think maybe this is why I got on board with it so easily. They really are, for want of a better word, completely ripped off from Doc and Marty.
Right.
Okay, from Back to the Future. But I think because it's done with such love, you accept it. They have even done a little short animated segment of Rick and Morty visiting 2015 whilst Doc and Marty are there.
Oh, okay.
And to explain to them, this is all bullshit. This must be a complete different dimension because we don't have flying cars. We don't have anything like this. It is a genuinely gut-busting, laugh-out-loud show, and I'm only halfway through the first season. I can't wait to get further on. Cool. They did this amazing thing as well in New York to celebrate the opening of the most recent season. They had this huge spaceship with Morty in it, and overnight they embedded it in the sidewalk in New York and had all this steam coming out of it. And then on a bench about 50 yards away from it, they had a model of Rick with a bottle of grog, just absolutely pissed out of his head. which I thought was a great way to advertise it. And then, as if by magic, the next night it was just completely gone. But it was very, very cool. If you get a chance, have a look online. You'll be able to see it.
Cool.
But yes, Rick and Morty. I can't really say too much more about it because you need to watch the episodes just to understand how the humour works and how funny it is. But it's no secret from Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon that the art style in it is very much taken from The Simpsons and Futurama, albeit I think a little bit more childlike. The comedy chops are much more adult than they are in The Simpsons, and it just works brilliantly. It's been a long time since I've watched something animated that has made me laugh out loud. Okay. And I mean a long time.
Cool.
I'm probably talking since like the first couple of seasons of Family Guy, because that doesn't even really make me laugh out loud anymore. But this is a good, sweet show. I think it's one also as well that, if you are a parent, you can happily watch it with your kids, because there's nothing in there that's too risque that you would have to sit there and explain to a small child, because it's so colourful and bright and funny. It's just a great show. Enjoy Rick and Morty.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And now we shall move on to this week's main topic.
When they got the ball, you know they won't drop it. The Geek-Minded fools discuss the main topic.
Okay, so when I had you in earlier in my monkey farm, I did explain to you that I was feeling a little bit sombre.
Yes,
this week.
You did.
And obviously you know why, but I'm going to tell our lovely listeners. Unfortunately, just very recently, the fabulous Gunnar Hansen, who name to you guys probably won't ring that much of a bell, but if I say the name Leatherface, it probably will. The bells will start ringing a little bit louder. He unfortunately passed away at the age of 68 of pancreatic cancer. I'm not going to go too much into the whys and wherefores and the just how sad it is that he's passed. Instead of that, I thought we would take this opportunity to celebrate what is my favourite film of all time.
Yeah.
It genuinely is, bar none. It's not about a genre thing. It's not about it being a horror movie or what have you. It just outright is my favourite film of all time. So I figured this would be the best chance we're going to get to celebrate said movie.
Indeed.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Now, funny enough, we deliberately left some movies out from our scary movie list, didn't we?
We did indeed.
And we discussed it at the time because we said that there are certain films that deserve a whole episode. One of which I remember being The Exorcist.
Yep.
But also, obviously, the most obvious one was this one.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, for me, the reason it is my favourite film of all time is because it does exactly what it says it's going to do on the tin. It promises...
It's set in Texas.
Yeah, it's set in Texas. It promises
is a massacre.
There is a massacre and there's chainsaws. I mean, you can't want for more than that.
It literally does what it says on the tin.
It does. I also love one of the taglines for it, which is the "Who will survive and what will be left of them." Yeah. Imagine seeing that on a cinema marquee. I mean, today kids would just look at that and just go, "Bleh." But in 1974 when this came out,
didn't you once say back then if you watched it they gave you a little badge saying I survived the Texas Chainsaw?
I survived the Texas Chainsaw.
Wouldn't you love one of them?
I would love one of them, indeed I would. Not as much as I'd love one of the masks, though. Yeah. God, I'd love one of the masks. Yeah. I suppose, really, to fully understand why the film got made, you'd need to really read up on it or watch a couple of documentaries. But don't worry, guys, I'm a bit of a know-all when it comes to this. So,
yes.
So let's just briefly chat about the making of the film and some of the people who were in it and, some of the ideas that they were trying to put across when they were making it. How old were you when it came out? Because obviously I was minus 2.
1974, I was 6.
You were 6, so I mean, there's no chance you would have seen this at the cinema.
I don't believe my mum took me to this one, no.
No. It probably wasn't on a double bill with anything like Snow White, I would doubt.
No.
But I think much like everyone who's ever been a school child, you must have got to the age of, say, 10 or 12 and knew someone who had a copy on VHS or something like that. Or, it was... I know when I was growing up, there was always a hooky copy of it going around, and I was always too scared to watch it.
When I was 10 or 12, there was still no such thing as a VHS, I'm afraid. So,
holy fucking Jesus! Oh my God, how did you watch films? Braille? God, that's just awful.
On telly, mate.
On the telly box.
That was all you had.
On the telly box. Basically, this was directed by Toby Hooper, also written by Toby Hooper and Kim Henkel. It tells the story of an extraordinarily bad day for 5 young teens who are out for a drive in their in their little mini motorhome thing on their way to visit their a relative's farmhouse. Mm-hmm. Toby Hooper basically made this film for one reason and one reason alone, and there's no getting around it. He did it for money. Okay, he'd made a very very short art film called Eggshells, I believe, which had got huge acclaim with kind of the art house indie cinema folk of the time. And then sat down, I believe, with Kim Henkel and decided that they needed to produce, write, direct, what have you, a film that was in an existing genre that was already doing well. And at that time, the horror genre was just about to blow up. I think just previous to that, you'd had Last House on the Left, which would have been the film that really kind of brought horror home, if you like. And
I think going back before that, probably Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, definitely Night of the Living Dead.
Was the film that sort of pushed horror back into the mainstream, probably.
Yeah, no, very much
so. More so than it had been for a while.
But the biggest difference between Night of the Living Dead to the time when we got to Texas Chainsaw was Night of the Living Dead was still a thing of fantasy. Whereas we had Last House on the Left and Texas Chainsaw, which were very much that shit could happen. That could happen right now if you walked, to Croydon, I don't know, anywhere. There could be someone sat in a farmhouse who's just a little bit backwards and has a range of power tools that they could use to dismember you. This is the reason why I still, to this day, think Texas Chainsaw is the scariest movie of all time, because it could really happen. These people are real. They're not... This isn't supernatural. These aren't ghosts. This isn't fantasy. They're not zombies, as much as I love zombies.
Well, obviously, it's based on a real person, isn't it?
It was indeed. It was based on Ed Gein, who was known as the Plainfield Ghoul, wasn't he? Which is not so far. It was Wisconsin, wasn't it? So he a lot of the ideas that Tobe Hooper obviously used in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies basically came from his horrific crimes, which were I think he was arrested in 1958. And as they arrested him in his barn, in Ed Gein's barn, they found the remains of, I believe she was a shopkeeper who'd gone missing. And she was tied up by her ankles and she'd been just kind of cut down the middle. He'd split her like a deer, hadn't he? And he would make the nipple belts and the full skin suits. And obviously...
He had lampshades made out of human skin, didn't he?
Did indeed, he did indeed. He was a freaky, scary man. But again, only because he was... he was deranged. He was mentally unstable. This wasn't something that he was doing that he thought, it wasn't a power trip. It's kind of like someone wanting to take a watch apart and put it back together again.
So Tim, this was perfectly normal.
Tim, he was interested in how things worked and just wanted to take them apart, and that was that. But obviously, but through those horrific crimes, it gives you just this whole dearth and a huge source of material that you can make these amazing films with. So, Tobe Hooper, Kim Henkel, and his bunch of merry filmmaking men went out into the, as I said at the top of this show, into the blistering heat in 1973 and started shooting Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I just think they did just one of the most fabulously eerie jobs of all time on any film. I mean, they had a great bunch of guys working on this. You had a guy called Bob Burns, I believe his name was. He was the set dresser. So I think I'm going to start with him, and just to say, wow, what a job you did of making those sets look so disgusting. Especially if you see the house now, because the house is still standing, I believe. I believe they turned it into a restaurant. And it's, the same layout. But Leatherface's kill room with the big standing meat hooks. Mm-hmm. I can't see that scene without seeing that, because it's such a real... Well, it is real. It's such a real-looking bit of kit that this guy has built. It went horrifically over budget because this guy was just going out and buying sort of like, old taxidermied animals and bones and just awful. The stink in that place must have been horrific. Because obviously all shot during the summer of 73, and Texas is not a cool place, is it?
Absolutely.
It's not a chilly place. So yeah, he basically put these amazing sets together, which I think are as much of a character in the film as the actual actors.
Yes.
Now I know for a fact that it does house, I think, one of your favourite characters in movies of all time, which is played by the fantastic Paul Partain as Franklin.
God love Franklin.
You do love him, didn't you?
The most annoying person ever put on celluloid.
Played it well, though, didn't he?
Played the dick absolutely fantastically, yes.
Surprisingly, never went on really to do much else than that, did he? I think he's got a cameo in one of the remakes or one of the reboots, as it were. But I think he ended up selling stereos after that. I do believe as well that when they were on set and they were filming it, when they would break in between shooting.
Don't tell me he'd stay in character.
Yeah, he stayed in character.
Fuck off.
And he was kind of ostracised by the rest of the cast. They would go off
he was a
one
dick.
route and he would go elsewhere. But the fact of the matter is, he does play it well, because you're meant to dislike him, aren't you? He's meant to be...
Vehemently so.
Which, again, I think is a very, very brave move for them as filmmakers to make the most dislikable character in the film somewhere who is wheelchair-bound, who normally, in a film, this would be someone that you would kind of put almost the sympathy vote on, or almost, this would be someone you should care about, but... you just fucking hate him from the get-go, don't you?
I don't think that was brave necessarily. It was just it wasn't PC times, was it?
No, I suppose not.
So it's like, let's put the dick in the wheelchair.
Yeah, stick the dick in the wheelchair. Obviously, a fabulous cast. We lost Marilyn Burns as well.
Yes, we did.
Not so long ago, which unfortunately I didn't pick up on in time for us to do anything on the podcast about. But this is the one reason why I didn't want to miss this chance to celebrate the life of Gunnar Hansen and his amazing creation, which was, of course, Leatherface. Now, the film was originally going to be called Leatherface as well, and they went through a number of different titles, I think, before they finally got to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Do you know why it's called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Other than the obvious, no.
Okay. I think the idea of having the chainsaw as your main weapon was Toby Hooper was stood in a department store, wasn't he? It was during Christmas time,
right?
And there were hundreds of people all flocking round him, and if anyone who's ever been Christmas shopping who doesn't really like shopping will have had this experience. And he looked up at the kind of hardware section and saw that there was a chainsaw and thought, well, that would be the easiest way for me to get out of here really quickly if I just grab that and I'll just go through the crowd. And that's pretty much where the idea for the chainsaw being the weapon of choice came from. But the only reason it was called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was because he was going through a number of titles. Obviously, as I say, Leatherface, Head Cheese was one of them. There's a few more, but he was pitching to one of the guys who was putting money in, and he came out with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the guy immediately said, well, I wouldn't let my daughter go and see that, or my son. I wouldn't take my wife. That sounds absolutely awful. That sounds disgusting.
Sold.
We'll have that one, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it is a brilliant title. It really, really is. There's always... I've got two versions of it on DVD, and one of them, chainsaw, is one word, and the other one, chainsaw, is two words.
Oh, okay.
I think it is supposed to be one word.
I think it is one word.
Yeah. It is one word, but if you listen to the opening narration by John Larroquette, he very, very much puts emphasis on Chainsaw Massacre. Unfortunately, we couldn't get John Larroquette to do our opening narration for this.
Who did it?
It's a very little-known actor. I think he's up and coming. I think he's got big things to come.
Scott Voorhees.
Scott Voorhees, indeed, yeah. So, surrounding the main antagonist, Leatherface, you've got this fabulous family of freaks, one of which is played brilliantly by Jim Seedale, who's the cook, who I think does a fabulous job of being probably one of the creepiest fuckers I've ever seen of all time. If you haven't seen this film, then I'm not going to apologise for spoilers, because you should really have seen it. If you like this sort of film, you like this, this genre, it's a film that you've got no excuse for not seeing. The scene where she thinks she's escaped, which is about halfway through, and she happens across the cook, Jim Seedale, at the gas station, and he's going to look after her, isn't he? And he kind of saves her. He's like, oh, okay, and then flips on a dime, doesn't he, and starts beating the shit out of her with a broom handle, which is a great scene for one reason. It's the fact of how freakishly scary Jim Seedale is at playing that role, and knowing that at every cut of the camera he was just in pieces, because he couldn't bear hitting poor Marilyn Burns every time. She was covered in bruises by the end of this. Apparently, at the end of filming, Marilyn Burns had to spend at least a month trying to get her face and her arms all back into shape, because she was just scarred and bruised and burnt from the Texas sun. And Jim Seedale obviously had a fair bit to do with that by beating her so fucking hard with a broomstick.
But one thing you have to say is that all of the family are very well cast, because they all look proper
backwards,
hicky, but also just sort of have that deranged look in the eye. It's the casting was absolutely fantastic. Who was the casting director on this one? Who did the casting?
Do you know what? I'm not 100% sure, but we can find that out. It was probably, more than likely, all done just by Toby Hooper and Ken Ankle. Okay. The initial guy that they got to play Leatherface was apparently a big hulking monster of a guy, but couldn't stay sober for more than 10 minutes. Because initially Gunnar Hansen had put his name forward for it, but he was going to be just a completely different character. I think he was going to be a sheriff at one point in it. but they kind of said to him, we think you should play the main bad guy kind of thing, or one of the main bad guys. And he was like, okay, well, why do you think I've got what it takes to play, this character? And I'm like, well, because we can't sober the other guy up pretty much, and the costume will fit you. He is a character, Leatherface, again, massively petrifying because he's so unpredictable. Because he is, in effect, he's just a child. He's a big baby.
Around the family, he's almost the childlike one, isn't he? It's only when somebody stumbles onto his territory that he takes on this sort of psychopathic demeanour.
Exactly. And there is that lovely. I feel a bit odd using the word lovely, but to me it is lovely because it's beautifully shot and beautifully played. But it's the scene where you've got Jerry Danziger, I think is the guy's name, who plays. Alan Danziger, who plays Jerry. Who's rushing in to look for everyone after, Terry's been hung on the meat hook. You've got the other guy who's had his head taken off on the thing, and you've got this real hippie looking dude, isn't he, as well? He's just like the epitome of hippie in the flower shirt and the big curly hair and the glasses. And that moment where Leatherface rushes into his kill room, the kitchen, and finds him, basically sneaking about in his shit is amazingly done. Because he basically takes everyone out, doesn't he? He smacks him on the head with a lump hammer.
I mean, that is probably one of the most iconic horror scenes of all time.
Yeah,
the smack on the head with the flicking legs, the twitching legs, and him dragging him through and then slamming the door. That is proper horror in every sense.
And that is the bit that scares me the most. It's the twitching of the feet, which was probably just a throwaway thing that actor did. Just thought, well, if he's going to be, if he's going to have a brain injury, he's going to twitch, he's going to freak out, he's going to convulse.
Your body's still reacting to the trauma,
And of course, as well, the amazing bit of acting that's pulled off by Gunnar Hansen of him kind of smacking his head and kind of sitting there. It's a child who knows he's going to get told off for something, isn't it? Because he's let these outsiders into his home, and he just can't work out if there's going to be another one coming. You see, he checks every door and every window, sits down, stands up. It's just beautifully played. It really is beautifully played.
But I think probably my favourite character is the hitchhiker.
Edwin Neal. He's amazing, isn't he?
Absolutely superb.
That's a nice camera.
Proper batshit crazy.
Yeah, he is amazing. He's actually the first of the family that we meet.
Yes.
Because they pick him up, obviously him being the hitchhiker. And he does this amazing thing where he takes a photo, doesn't he? And then he puts it into some tinfoil, sets it alight, and then just closes up the tinfoil and puts it in his little pouch that he's got. There's no explanation to it. I don't think it needs any explanation. It's just that he's fucking batshit crazy.
Absolutely.
And then he decides to compare knives with Franklin, doesn't he? And Franklin, I think it's Franklin is first blood, isn't he? I believe he gets cut by the hitcher.
Indeed, yes.
Now the hitchhiker doesn't obviously last the whole film, and he does make an appearance in the sequel, but that's for another podcast. Edwin Neal, out of all of them, if Jim Seedow is the crazy, Leatherface is the baby, then Edwin Neal is just the outright freaky, spooky. There is almost something supernatural about him.
Just very unsettling.
Yeah, it's the birthmark as well. He's got this red birthmark on his face. And he's an absolutely lovely man as well, Edwin Neal. When you see him interviewed, he's really nice. He's very well spoken. I believe he's now anyway, he's a rare movie poster dealer.
Oh, okay.
He goes to auctions and picks up all these posters and sells them on. But yeah, he's a very, very lovely man when you hear him speaking. And for him to come out with that, it's just everything about him. He sounds dirty. His voice sounds like he's just horrible. Of course, as well, you had one of the youngest members of the cast was John Dugan, and he played the grandfather.
Indeed, ironically.
The big scene of the movie, for me, the big scene of the movie is dinner time.
The dinner scene, yeah.
Which, would you like to hazard a guess at how long it took him to shoot that?
3 days.
27 straight hours.
Oh my God.
27 straight hours. Reason being, they were losing Jim Seedow on that day. He was off to go and... Only took them 32 days to shoot the whole film.
Right.
They only had Jim Seedow for a week. And they were losing him on that day. And they said, look, we're here until we finish this scene. And it looks like it's shot at night, but it's not. That's shot during the day.
Oh, okay.
All the windows are blacked out with black blankets. And apparently the place just absolutely fucking stung.
That scene is almost nightmarish, isn't it? The whole thing is so unsettling. From obviously the decor within the room,
Well, the chair that she is on, if you look very carefully under her arms, there's two more arms. There's human arms. Yeah. And it's just... The set decor, as we said at the top of this, Bob Burns just pulled every stop out. It's amazing.
It is Alice in Wonderland given a nightmarish spin, isn't it?
But if you've ever seen any, if you're unlucky enough to have ever seen any pictures of Ed Gein's mother's home, because when she passed away, Ed Gein kept the home exactly as it was for years and years and years afterwards. He never touched anything, and it does actually look like that. It's bizarre, it's really bizarre how well Bob Burns took just these few black and white photos and went, oh, okay, right, so he was a fucking psycho, fine, I'm all over this, that's fine, I've got it. He's making lamps out of chickens, and the centrepiece at the dinner table is, at one end you've got the chicken's legs, and at the other end you've got the chicken's head, and apparently after about 4 hours it just fucking honked in there, because obviously you're shooting this during the daytime with that heat beating down on that house, big wooden house, and bones and bits of chicken liver on the floor. And at one point they put like a rag in Marilyn Burns' mouth. That rag was just on the floor, and obviously because they've just picked up this rag and put it in her mouth for a shot, they can't then change the rag for continuity, so they've got this filthy rag. Oh god, the poor woman, poor woman. But the moment in that scene that really gets me is Leatherface and the hitchhiker coming down each side of the table to kind of just look at her, basically. Well, the hitchhiker is there to prod her and just be an awful, terrible bastard, whereas Leatherface is genuinely very interested in her. I think, and because it's dinner time as well, he's got his pretty lady mask on, because he's tried to dress up nicely for her by wearing her boyfriend's face for her, which is a very nice thing, I think. The care was there.
What a lovely man.
The care was there. I literally could talk for hours about this film. I really could, and it wasn't really until I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I think I managed to get hold of the Ultimate Edition, and it's just packed full of extras, and saw a really, really good cut of it, because up until I'd say 5 or 6 years ago I didn't own it on DVD, I only had it on VHS, so I didn't manage to watch it. I think in preparation for this particular episode you were looking on places like Netflix, weren't you, or somewhere or wherever, to try and find a copy to watch, and you can't really find it out there to watch, can you? No. And it's a real shame, because it does deserve much more kudos than it gets. There's a print of this in the American Museum of Art. This is considered to be it is a landmark movie. It's a landmark title, and as you heard in the opening narration, this really did change the landscape of modern horror. I, for one, really am heartbroken that Gunnar Hansen has died, because he was only 68, and I think it's no age to go, is it? I mean, no age. There's no good age to die, obviously, but I mean, we discussed very briefly before we recorded this that it is not as much of an impact as maybe people like Wes Craven, but for me, Gunnar Hansen is the original boogeyman. He is the faceless, voiceless freak that could jump out of any dark alley or any barn or any these people do exist and can exist, and that is why this is a scary film. That is why Gunnar Hansen's portrayal of this huge man baby who knows nothing other than the fact that he's got to prepare the meat for dinner was such a successful, iconic role. So I salute Gunnar Hansen and his portrayal of Leatherface. Not Thomas Hewitt, not fucking Bubba I'll accept, but he hasn't got a name. They haven't got a background history. You know nothing about these people, and that's how it should stay.
And of course, he only played the role in the first film, but famously only had the one costume.
He did,
didn't he? And had to wear the same costume for, what was it? What did you say? A 32-day shoot or something?
32-day shoot, yeah.
In the Texas sun. And he said by the end it was absolutely rotten.
Yeah. He apparently, during that 27-hour shoot for the dinner scene, although the room stunk so much anyway, he was apparently the smelliest thing in the room. So to have overpowered the smell of dead animal flesh, that's really, he's really going some. He was a big lad as well, wasn't he?
Indeed.
Big Icelandic man.
And funny enough, I was in Sainsbury's yesterday and perusing the magazines, and they had, I think it was Total Film, and brought out a horror special. And this horror special was basically everything you wanted to know about horror films, but also professed to have a list of the 25 greatest horror films of all time. So that obviously piqued my interest, so I picked it up. Obviously wasn't going to buy it, it was $5.99, blow that for a lark. But flicked through it, and of course number one was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Rightly
so. Well done them for picking the right answer. It is now, and it will always be, my favourite film. It's just amazing. It's so beautifully shot, and it's so lovingly created. Albeit it was made for money, but I don't think they realised quite how much lightning they captured in the bowl in those 32 days.
Yep.
excellent.
Excellent. Well done. Anything else you got?
No.
Okay.
I'm all good.
I have something. I have a little piece of housekeeping, believe it or not.
Oh dear.
And it's a bit of an apology. Now, what listeners won't realise is that when we record this, I'm the person who actually cobbles the thing together. I edit the shows together at the end of it. And so, yeah, you sort of come in, weave your magic, and then go away, and then magically episodes...
I don't think I weave any magic.
And then episodes appear on the internet.
But just for your editing purposes, you can edit this together. Magic, I wink. Think, don't. Weave, I do. There you go, you can edit that together. I don't. Think, I do. Weave, magic.
So therefore, when I listen back to it, I'm kind of listening as a listener, because I listen to quite a few podcasts anyway. And last week, it was in The Monkey Farm, and we were talking about Frank Miller's Sin City. And it's the sort of thing where I listen back to myself and I'll start shouting at myself and going, well, no, it's this. And I find myself doing that to podcasts anyway. When people say something wrong or don't know something, I'm literally shouting it at them. And I was talking about it, and I was saying the Mickey Rourke storyline was based on this, and then I was saying the Clive Owen one. Oh, I can't remember. And I'm always doing that. You and I are forever drawing blanks on this thing, on things that we know. So I just wanted to apologise for listeners for how crap that was, and the fact that, yes, I do know that the Clive Owen storyline was from the comic The Big Fat Kill. And also the second film, which I said I think was based on The Babe Wore Red, wasn't based on The Babe Wore Red at all. It was based on A Dame to Kill For. Which, of course, when I'm sitting there listening back when I'm editing it, I'm going... It's the fucking Dame to Kill For. What are you talking about?
It's because of the pure excitement that we create
ridiculous.
When we're recording.
For some reason, as soon as the mic goes on, I just draw a complete blank. Mic on, brain off. Absolutely ridiculous.
You almost become a Leatherface-esque character.
It is just ridiculous. So I apologise for that, and I just wanted to say that out of my utter frustration, if not anybody else's, I apologise for not knowing those, and I do know what they are.
Never apologises to me, so you lot should think yourself lucky.
This is
you
true.
really
This
should.
is true. But one more piece of housekeeping as well is something that you and I have discussed quite a lot. Is
we're going to do the human centipede thing.
Is feedback from our listeners.
Yes.
Because we have a very frustrating thing where we can see how many people click on our links, but we have no figures on how many people are actually downloading this episode and how many people out there actually listen to this. Now, I'm pretty sure that we name check most of our listeners anyway.
Hello Matt, hello John.
Indeed. Hello, was it Holly?
Hello Holly, hello
yes,
Rupert.
Indeed, yeah. All these. Hello Greg.
Yep.
Dave. And that's probably it, those 6.
Hello Livy.
But simply so that we can maybe try and get an idea for how many people are out there, but also what people think of the show and whether they think you're great and I'm crap and so on and so forth. We would ask that, obviously for those of you who download this from iTunes, would you please go on iTunes and just leave us a review? Now, it doesn't have to be a 5-star review. If you think we're barely average and want to give a 3-star review, that's absolutely fine. But it would be good to get some feedback and also just to get an idea for how many bums are on seats out there and how many people are actually listening to this thing. Because obviously, you know, we put a fair amount of time and effort into this, and it would just be nice to get a feel for how many people are out there. So if you are listening to this and you do download it from iTunes, would you please go on iTunes and just leave us a review over the next couple of weeks, and it would be just a good bit of feedback for us.
Otherwise I may visit you in my hockey mask.
This is true, and nobody wants that.
No.
And his pants.
There'll be no pants.
Naked but for a hockey mask.
I will have my weapon fully out.
We're on that bombshell. That's it for this week's episode. So for myself, Graham.
And myself, Scott.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.